What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA strategy show presented by No House Advantage. I am Dave Loughran on the Twitters at Laffy_D, LOUGHY_D, joined every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Sunday by Joshua Engleman at Josh Engleman on the Twitters himself. What's going on, brother?
What's going on, dude? Four gamer, man. That allows us like a full hour to talk about everything other than this DFS slate, which is great for you and I.
Yeah, it kind of feels nice. I mean, I woke up, actually, I looked at it yesterday thinking, all right, what do we got here? Coming off an 11-game slate, coming off a Sunday slate, which was just wild. And then Saturday, everyone was late scratched in the news by the time of lock. Everything from earlier in the day was irrelevant. So maybe we get lucky today. I don't know. You've got some news, though, like Brad Beal running questionable in this one. That seems pretty significant. Then the Clippers news, we'll pay close attention to all four of those guys that are questionable. Some of them actually pretty impactful. So not a ton, but for 4 games, there's a couple pieces of news that are going to be huge going into lock.
Yeah, it feels like there's not a lot of news, but in all actuality, Beal is in the 7:00 game. At the very least, we'll know that one. That's like sort of the least of our worries, or at least we should. They could rule him out at 6:55 for all we know. But we should get the Beal news early, but that has gigantic trickle-down effects to the rest of the team. We likely won't know Paul George. Obviously, we didn't know it yesterday until pretty late.
Yeah, that 10:00 game too.
Yeah, that one will be not all that fun. At least there are 2 games at 10:00, so you'll have a little bit more freedom to swap around. 50% of the slate is at 10:00, so it's not as bad as this could be. But those 2 pieces create all sorts of different roster construction and value if they are in or out. And on a 4-game slate, that's really, really important.
It certainly is. And when we get ownership projections updated here, I'll let you know where everybody's coming in at. Yesterday was wild too, because we can take a look at Fantasy Cruncher right now. Take a look at the lineup study. You can find lineup study on Fantasy Cruncher. You can find Fantasy Cruncher through Awesemo. Just grab that add-on when you sign up at awesemo.com/join, especially if you're an MME player. But really, if you're just trying to improve your game, there is so much that Fantasy Cruncher has to offer. And one of those factors is lineup study. We try to hit on it every single morning here on the strategy show. So I was just going over trying to look at a couple things, and we can jump into this right now. We got Jordan Klein producing this one. But Kelly Olynyk at one point in yesterday's game, right, had 22 points. And at the time, I'm like, okay, 22 points for Kelly Olynyk. That's not crazy. But then I went and I looked, and the man had 0 3-pointers. He finished with 25 points. Not a single made 3 for Kelly Olynyk on 25 points. I mean, that is Twilight Zone type stuff right there.
Yeah, it's really crazy. 10 of 12 from the field out, like inside of the 3-point line, plus another 9 boards. 4,400, kind of a no-brainer play yesterday. I didn't love him as much on FanDuel just because of the one center, and I thought there were a couple other options that were comparable. Wish I would have loved him a little bit more, but on DK, he looked like an incredible play. The ownership was there. He was 60% owned in the fadeaway last night, and that made perfect sense to me. The 2 highest owned players were Olynyk and Russ, and they both did exactly what you expected them to do.
So let's take a look at Fantasy Cruncher, see if we can find anything good here. Jordan will pull it up on the screen for us. Yesterday was Monday the 29th. We'll go to the biggest contest. Who do we have in first place, Josh, and what did they do?
The name of the person that won is not all that important, but we will talk about their winning lineup. That would be, by the way, Chipotle Addict taking down 100K. So,
no surprise.
The rich get richer. Russell Westbrook clearly needed his 94.5 fantasy points last night. Dude was just on one. If he's going to shoot 4 of 6 from 3 in any game, he's probably having a really good game because the assists and rebounds are going to be there and he's going to get to the hoop. It's all about how the threes are falling. Previous to yesterday, he was 1 for his last 11 from 3. That's a little bit more up Russell Westbrook's alley, but 35 points, 21 assists last night, 14 rebounds, just an absolutely crazy game. We saw Terrence Mann go for 32.5. Luke Kennard go for 31.75. Both guys low owned and looked a lot better once Paul George got ruled out. Kelly Olynyk, Joe Val went for 50 at only 2.5% ownership. That doesn't shock me all that much against Kelly Olynyk. Harden went for 78. Marcus Morris went for 37. And Isaiah Hartenstein, even though he tried to be terrible, still went for 35 fantasy points at 3,200. He was 2 for 8 from the field and still was able to hit basically 11x on his salary last night.
I was waiting to get that Hartenstein game like we saw last time where he was mega chalk, like early last year, I think it was. Remember?
Yeah.
And he played
like 8 minutes.
Yeah.
I do remember the game.
As those games were happening yesterday, I was wondering, like, is there enough good value? And of course, we got that news later in the show, which just opened everything up to where it's a lock that Russell Westbrook and James Harden are in the winning lineup. And that obviously ended up being the case. 404.75 DraftKings points. Russ and Harden combining for 108 or 160 or 170, something absurd. So 171 or so. So that was the difference right there. If you could get them in, but it's just crazy to look at the rest of this lineup, Josh, right? It's a $4,300 Terrence Mann, $3,200 Luke Kennard, $4,400 Kelly Olynyk, $4,500 Marcus Morris, $3,200 Isaiah Hartenstein, and then a $7,700 Jonas Valanciunas. Like, that is literally as stars and scrubs as you can possibly get.
Yeah. If you're going to be paying $11K for Russ and $10,900 for Harden, you got to hit every single one of those 4K-ish plays. Like they all got to go for 30 and change to really make that work. That's what makes it really difficult to roster Russ and Harden. Like last night, it worked out perfectly, but you need to get kind of lucky. Like I wonder what this lineup actually looked like before the Paul George news.
Nothing like this.
I would be surprised if Mann, Kennard, and Morris, all three of them were in there. Like this clearly got swapped to and worked out perfectly.
Yeah, it's when did the Paul George news break? Around
something around 9:00, if I want to say, but I'm guessing, late.
Well,
I think sometime after my notifications on my phone go into nighttime mode.
It's fascinating because this lineup had Russ and Harden already. It's not like it was a late swap to Harden, which would have made sense having already had Westbrook in there. So like you said, how ugly could this have possibly looked? Maybe it wasn't that bad, but having the ability to make that adjustment and massive improvement with the Paul George news. I mean, like how many Clippers do you think were in there? You had 3 in there. Were there any in there?
Could have been any. We have no idea. No way to know.
No.
Left $800 of salary on the table, which makes me think obviously this got late swap too, because you would have just probably spent that salary a little bit more.
Pretty insane though.
Great swaps, Chipotle Addict. Great swaps.
And by the way, Fantasy Cruncher has something called Late Swap Optimizer too, which is huge, where you can just take your lineups, plug them in, late swap optimize, and then it will give you the optimal formations or configurations after news breaks. When something happens, you throw in updated projections, updated ownership, all of that stuff, drop it in there, and it does it for you. It is a whole lot better than universal swap, where you're universally swapping the same player out everywhere for exactly the same player. Makes a big difference, Josh.
It really does. That's a good lineup. Another 100K to Chipotle Addict. Good for him, I guess.
Yep. He cashed 102 of 105 lineups too.
That's
pretty good.
That's a big number on that kind of slate. So his ownership percentages? He had 98% Isaiah Hartenstein.
Wow.
Yeah. 73% Olynyk, 63% Russ, 46% Harden. I mean, that's 10.9x, 10.2x, 8.6x, 7.2x. You're going to have a lineup somewhere sniffing around the top if you hit the, 4 of the best plays of the day.
Yep. And now we have Russell Westbrook again on this slate. It'll be interesting to see what Bradley Beal or what happens to him with this hip bruise. So let's dive into it. Happy to have you guys with us. If I haven't said so yet, and I don't think I have, hammer that thumbs up button. Just get it out of the way. You won't have to hear us bitch about it. It makes life a whole lot easier for all of us now. Hit the subscribe button as well. That's actually the biggest thing. I mean, we love when you hit the thumbs up because early on in shows, when we talk about the YouTube algorithm, there's a real thing, right? Like there's even something where if you hit the thumbs up early on and it gets a lot of likes at the beginning of a live stream, it's recommended more during the live stream than if the thumbs up all come throughout it. So that's why you hear us really hit it hard at the beginning of the shows. There's a method to all of the madness here. And when it comes to subscriptions, it expands our reach. It helps us be able to keep putting out free content on the site. And hopefully it is the best content that you're going to find. I think it's the best content you're going to find on YouTube. Pretty confident in that. So subscribe, hit that notification bell. Let's dive into it. Charlotte and Washington, Josh. Charlotte Hornets. There's no real news here because LaMelo Ball's been out. Malik Monk is probable to play. So we're essentially working with the same team we've had for the week or so since LaMelo went out. And they're facing a super fast-paced Washington team that ranks bottom 5 in defensive rating. Could be an interesting spot on a 4-game slate for Charlotte. What are your thoughts starting off with the backcourt, Terry Rozier, Devontae Graham, and then we'll get to the wings in the front court?
Charlotte's my favorite team on the slate today. Yeah. They just look incredible.
Oh, we got ownership, by the way, 5 minutes ago.
I already grabbed it. I'm good.
All right.
I think that Charlotte is under-owned on both sites pretty aggressively. Based on my data, Charlotte gains 5 additional possessions over their average by playing Washington. Washington, the fastest team in the league by a mile. Gordon Hayward is 7K on FanDuel today at the small forward spot. Basically a fantasy point per minute guy, but he gets a bump because of this pace. 35% ownership. I have him at like 46. PJ Washington is 5,600. He's $1,200 more expensive on DraftKings, and I still like him there. I think PJ Washington should be in more than half of the lineups. We have him at 40% ownership. I'm in for Terry Rozier at 7,500. I'm in for Devontae Graham at 5,300. All these guys are like 25, 35, 45% of your lineups, well over the field on everybody. Miles Bridges at 5,100. Sign me up. Malik Monk on DraftKings at 4,900. He's 6,500 on FanDuel. He's $1,600 more expensive on FanDuel than he is on DK today. I love him on DraftKings. I love all these guys. You can even get to Biyombo for 20 minutes on DK as a mild value play. Anytime you play Washington, it's going to look good. On a 4-game slate where your guys aren't really overpriced or anything, I can't see a way where Charlotte isn't my most exposed team. I'm going to have combinations of all of these guys.
Yeah, it's a 4-game slate. Not only are they not overpriced, but they're facing Washington. There's so many ways to feel good about this. And you look at last night's game with Bradley Beal out. The game had 256 total points in regulation, right? Like
it doesn't get much better.
It's par for the course for Washington right now. It really is. It's absurd. So when I see, first of all, when I look at ownership here, it all makes sense to me. Bismack Biyombo, $3,200 against Washington. Now, is Bismack Biyombo someone that we can count on or rely upon to play huge minutes? No, certainly not. But he's basically minimum salary on a 4-gamer. How many minutes do you have him projected for would be the big question here.
I gave him 20. This can go a couple different directions. He could probably play 22, 24, something like that. Washington's in an interesting spot. They've got Len. They've got Robin Lopez. They don't have Daniel Gafford, who, if he plays today, I'm going to assume that they just transplanted his leg with a robot's leg.
There's no way.
No, not at all. So they have like 2 legitimate centers that are going to play X amount of minutes. Rui can play the 5 against Charlotte. It's not going to be much of a problem against Biyombo or Zeller, or if they're stretch 5ing it with PJ Washington. So the Washington can throw a couple different looks at them. For 3,200, I'm willing to roll the dice a little bit on Biyombo. I do think that he is like a hair over-owned at 26% on DK, but that could just be the difference of me giving him an extra minute. So I can't look into it I can't be against it too much.
Do you draw a big difference between ownership on DraftKings and FanDuel? Because there's a pretty big disparity right now. I know it's early, but a lot more going to certain guys like PJ Washington, Gordon Hayward, Devontae Graham, all north of 30% on FanDuel right now. Meanwhile, Bismack Biyombo's got the highest projected ownership on DraftKings.
Yeah, so the salaries are just nuts. Gordon Hayward's $600 more expensive on DK. Terry Rozier is $200 more expensive on DK. PJ Washington is $1,200 more expensive. But Monk is the opposite. Like I said before, he's $1,600 cheaper on DraftKings, which I don't know what to do with that. Devontae Graham is $800 cheaper on FanDuel, so they're bouncing all over the place. But all told, like, I like them all still. Every one of these guys that are more expensive on DK, I still think are under-owned on DraftKings for any sort of reference. The only guy that I think is, so like I think Biyombo's slightly over-owned, but again, just based on the minutes, that can go either way. I think Devontae Graham is just slightly over-owned on FanDuel. I have him at 29 and he's projected for 30. So it's not like I don't think it's perfectly correct. I just want to unload like a full clip on Charlotte. I want every one of these dudes.
Steve says, how much did you guys pay for your mics? They look expensive. Not nearly as much as I paid for my camera. I can tell you that.
Yeah, there's a lot of money in my office right now in just equipment.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a decent mic. It's nothing insane. It's a Rode Procaster or Rode. Is it Rode or Rode? I always thought it was Rode.
I don't know. I got the Elgato Wave 3.
That's nice. Yeah.
A fan.
I don't know. I talk and it picks it up and you hear it. That's all that matters. And it sounds good.
Yeah.
Better than
that's our jobs, man. Like, I'm not gonna.
Yeah,
we're not gonna speak
Yetis though.
You know what we should have done? We should have got cups with really long strings from North Carolina to all the way to Pennsylvania and see how the audio would have been.
That could work. Yeah. Next time. All right. Let's talk about Washington. Now, do you have Beal in? I'm assuming you do right now.
Yeah, I do. And obviously, like, I don't have a damn clue whether or not he plays, but if he plays, he looks great.
Yeah. Like if Beal plays, he looks really good. But if Westbrook plays, if Beal plays, we were already talking yesterday on the deeper dive about, hey, even if Beal is active, Westbrook is still viable. He's come down $100 on DraftKings, so nothing, super significant, but he's right above 11 or right around 11K. He's $11,000 flat on FanDuel. Would you still be getting to a decent amount of Westbrook on a 4-game slate tonight in the event that Beal is in?
Yeah. So with them both in, I had Russ at 11K on FanDuel in the optimal 24% of the time. We had him projected for 34. So while I think it's a little high, it's not anything too crazy. Like total points will rule the roost here. And on a 4-gamer, like Russ can very easily just hang 60 and be a necessity. On DK at 10-9, we have him projected for 24% ownership. I had him in the optimal 19% of the time. I think that is basically spot on as far as I'm concerned. So no issue whatsoever getting to Russ today, even if Beal is in. Obviously, if he is out, he's the clear top pay up option, and you're not even sort of worried about anything. You just play an absolute ton of him. But even if he's in, I'm happily going to Russ. But I prefer Beal to Russ if Beal is in by a lot on FanDuel and a little bit on DK.
It's just so hard to get away from Russell Westbrook with the way he's been playing. And I'm not talking recency bias because of yesterday, right? I'm talking about now, if you look at it on the season, I mentioned he was just a few tenths of a rebound away from averaging a triple-double on the season. Now, Russell Westbrook is averaging another triple-double on the season. I don't care if they're winning games. And yesterday they won that game because of him, but I don't care if they're not sustaining a winnable season because Russell Westbrook is racking up triple doubles. What I care about is seeing what he's doing from a fantasy standpoint. And when he can go out there and rip off 35, 14, and 21, and even if Beal's on the floor, can give you 35, 15, and 13 like he did earlier this month, only like 10 days ago, it's so hard to pass that up. No, like just because Beal is active. He's been doing this with Beal on the floor. It just so happens yesterday he almost cracked 100.
Yeah, I think the way that I'm looking at it right now is if Beal is in, I slightly prefer Jokic to Westbrook. And I think that makes my lineups balance a little bit too, just because I like Beal. But if Beal gets ruled out, Russell Westbrook becomes the premier pay up option on the slate. Both sites, no matter what. I don't really see how you could even make a case for anyone else.
Okay. Do you have anything else for Washington in this case? And if Gafford doesn't play, I don't know how many minutes he was going to get yesterday, but in the event
like 14 or something like that.
What's up?
He played like 14 or something in that neighborhood.
He played 15 minutes yesterday, if I recall correctly. So it was getting decent run. I don't know. He couldn't get off the court on his own. So I certainly don't see any way that he shows up today on the second leg of a back-to-back. No pun intended.
No, I feel I get it. I feel the same way. So I gave Len 21 minutes. I gave Robin Lopez 18 minutes. I gave Rui the rest of the center minutes. That makes Alex Len look like an interesting value play at 21 minutes. He's 3,900 on FanDuel, 4K on DraftKings. He's already picking up a little bit of ownership, somewhere in that 16 to 18 range, depending on which site you're looking at. I think you can go a little bit higher, but just know that the variability on Len is massive. He could play 12 minutes. He could play 26 minutes. Like, it's just shrug your shoulders and hope for the best.
You don't have to tell me.
Yeah, well, I did the same thing that you did that night, brother. So we are on the exact same page. I touted him on live before lock and had like 25% of 3% owned Alex Len, and he was worth 3% ownership.
Yep, and then the very next day he'll go for 35. I'm serious too. That is just what he does. I touted him twice in 4 games. The only 2 games where he had under 35 or 33 fantasy points. Like, it's just what he does, and
I don't trust it.
It doesn't matter where he goes, Josh. A coach is always just very much willing to not give him minutes on a consistent basis. So it is what it is. Let's talk.
The one guy we need to, I do want to touch on one guy quickly. So please. Chandler Hutchinson is the flat minimum on both sites, 3,500 on FanDuel, flat 3K on DraftKings. He played 25 minutes last night. Denny played 31. Now, obviously, Beal is not there, but Garrison Matthews didn't get the bigger run. Jerome Robinson started and played 20 minutes, but Hutchinson looked like they were happy to have him. Now, this guy has been perpetually injured. He has basically been injured nonstop since he's been in the league and nonstop for the past 2 years. I don't know what they're going to do with his minutes if Beal is in or out. Even if he's out, I don't know if we expect that sort of run again on a back-to-back. But at the flat minimum, of all the other guys that you can take from Washington, just given those minutes, I think Chandler Hutchinson has to be at least be looked at a little bit. I have him in my model as a 0.81 fantasy point per minute guy. That's the highest rate on Washington, not of Beal, Westbrook, or Alex Len. So if he really is getting 24, 25 minutes, that's a guy that's going to get a lot more ownership than what or he should be owned a lot more than what we have right now, which is basically nothing on FanDuel and 8% on DraftKings.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting him to get that type of run either. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. Philly and Denver, second game out of 4. Philly 4.5-point dogs, 220.5 total. Of course, no Joel Embiid makes a pretty big difference. They had won like 10 of 11 prior to that loss against the Clippers. You start facing these really good teams out west without Joel Embiid, it's going to be a much more uphill battle, Josh. And I think we'll be looking at one of those again today. This is the 6th game of a 6-game road trip for Philadelphia. So the 4.5 points makes sense to me. I wouldn't even be surprised if it was a little bit more than that, despite them holding on with Joel Embiid absent. He is ramping up activities, on-court activities, but he's not returning yet. So yet another game without Joel Embiid and another game without George Hill, who they added at the trade deadline.
This is a really weird game in terms of FanDuel and DraftKings. So on the FanDuel side, I pretty clearly like Ben Simmons at 7,900 more than anybody else on the team and more than the ownership we have. Tobias Harris is close, but Tobias Harris is $700 more than Ben Simmons right now. On average, I think Ben Simmons is actually a better fantasy performer. Over the past 30 days, it hasn't been close. Ben Simmons is 0.99. Tobias Harris is 1.26. But I'm not going to use the last 30 days of rates as if that is important to me. So I have them basically equal, and Ben Simmons is then $700 cheaper. So I really like going to Ben Simmons. Seth Curry, Dwight Howard, both look fine. Mike Scott for $100 above the minimum should probably see a little bit of time. I think that's at least mildly interesting to talk about. And then we get to the DraftKings side. Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, Danny Green, Seth Curry, Dwight Howard, Jesus, there's more. Shake Milton, Matisse Thybulle, all projected between 10 and 20% ownership on DK. Most of those guys are between 15 and 20. And when I spit out my Sims, it was like in full agreement. Ben Simmons, 17, Tobias, 15, Danny Green, 15, Seth Curry, 12. So I think that they're like basically properly owned on DraftKings, and every single one of them relative to salary basically looks the same. I don't know what to do with Philly on DK.
Well, I can tell you this much. If Dwight Howard doesn't get ejected, he now has back-to-back ejections for 2 technicals.
The clown.
and he doesn't foul out, Doc Rivers might really need him today. I'm just looking at this rotation. You can't have, if you actually have any intentions of winning this basketball game, dude, you can't throw Mike Scott out there at the 5 against Nikola Jokic. You can't do it.
Yeah. Well, here's the weird thing. Can you throw Dwight Howard out there against Nikola Jokic if he's just going to be on the perimeter too? Yeah, I agree.
Over Mike Scott, yeah. You can, because here's why I say that. You will give up Nikola Jokic threes. And even though I know that he shoots well from 3, I get that, but he is not a 11-time three-point shooter a game. He is someone that will destroy you in the post. And with 3-pointers, even if he's shooting relatively well from beyond the arc, you'd rather give that up, in my opinion, if you don't have the weapons to cover or the defense to cover him, than just have him shoot 80% in the paint against Mike Scott.
I think he's going to smash either way. I love the idea of getting Jokic, and we're going to get to that in a little bit.
I think he will too. All I'm saying is I'd rather give him the shot from 24 feet out than from 1 foot out.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Philly's in a real tough spot here. They just don't have bodies that match up with Jokic all that well. Whether even if it is Howard, that's not a great spot for them either. Jokic looks pretty good here. I guess do you have anything else you want to add from Philly? I guess. Because obviously this is your team. You probably have some takes.
So there's a couple of things. There's no way that you stop Nikola Jokic, like you said. It's not going to happen. So is there any reason to try and predict who's going to be the guy out there in order to slow him down? Like, if it doesn't work for Dwight, it's not going to work for Scott. Is Dwight Howard just too expensive anyway, even if Doc Rivers is trying to run him out there for a significant period of time? Is there just too much risk associated with him at that salary?
Probably. We have him projected for 15% ownership on DK right now at 5,800. How many minutes do you need out of Dwight to feel comfortable about that?
25, 27.
Yeah, I got him in for 24, showed up in the optimal lineup on DK 6% of the time. To me, he's over-owned. I don't trust him. I don't know. Maybe he comes out and wants to be different or something and make it through this game. And I mean, he's got really real minutes variability here. He hasn't played a ton, but he is getting the gate pretty early in a lot of these games. So there's also that. But this is a spot where they kind of need him to play more than, 24 minutes. He played 32 and a half on the 21st. I know. That was when Curry was still out. But, I mean, that's the only time he played more than 30 in this past month. It's clearly the most minutes that he played since Joel Embiid was out. He has 29 in one game, 29 and a half, 27-7, and 32-4. Those are the 3 big ones. The rest of them have been right around 20. So, obviously, if Dwight plays 28 minutes, he's going to be one of the highest owned guys on the slate. I don't know where you can actually project him. I gave him 24. And at 24, I'm not super interested, at least not relative to the public.
Yeah, that's the problem. If you're projecting him for 28, I think that changes a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Could he play 28? Yeah. It's really tough to say. It's really tough to say what they're going to try and do against Nikola Jokic. I don't have any answers I don't think Doc Rivers has any answers for you, to be honest. But
no. And I mean, what can you do? They have any other legitimate bot? It's certainly not going to be Paul Reed. They don't have anybody else.
I think you just try to send the house against him and hope that, Michael Porter Jr. is not knocking down shots from 3. Hope that Aaron Gordon's shots aren't getting knocked down. In all seriousness, they do that to Joel Embiid, who's very similar just in terms of how he can score at will in the post. Just do everything you can to take the ball away from him, force bad passes, and if they force passes out to the perimeter, hope that those shots don't go in. This
is probably the worst guy in the league that you can send doubles at, because he's probably he might be the best passer in the league, and he's 7 feet tall. He's going to hit everybody always where it needs to be.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying you have to just kind of hope that their shots don't go in. There isn't a right answer, though. There's no right answer to slowing down Jokic.
Here's my real question for you, and maybe it's changed. So let me just look it up. What do you see the line at right now?
What am I seeing, or what do I think it should be?
I had it at 4.5 earlier, but sometimes these things move. Okay, so it's 5. It's 5.
Oh, okay. So I moved a half a point.
That seems like it should be slightly higher today.
I'm seeing 5 now. Yeah, man, I said that right at the beginning of the game. I said I would probably put it around 6.
Mm-hmm.
If it's Joel Embiid, let me be clear though. If it's Joel Embiid, I'm putting this at a pick 'em, dude.
Yeah.
Like, because it's not just how Joel Embiid swings the line in a vacuum. It's the fact that Joel Embiid against Nikola Jokic and his defense, how that swings the line. Like, his impact against the Denver Nuggets is more important than almost any other team out there. And I'll see
100%. 100%. Yeah, I think Philly is a better team than Denver. We'll see what that means for Aaron Gordon. I think this game would be probably like Denver minus a half point, Denver -1, something
Basically
like that. But on a neutral court, it's Philly. Philly would be the favorite in this spot. So I do think that line is at least a little bit interesting. I wonder, like, it feels like in my head I'm missing something for the way this game plays out, because I think Denver's offense is just going to be in a really nice spot. But look, Philly's good too.
They are. And that's a perfect segue to Jokic here, right? Because I don't think we need to say much about him. I don't see how you can slow him down. Philly playing some slower games, lower scoring games lately, and their defense has actually really held up well. I don't see how you held up well against Nikola Jokic. They haven't faced anybody like him recently, so it's going to be tough. The closest they faced to someone like him, Josh, is Julius Randle, and Julius Randle only because he's jack of all trades in the sense that he can pass, that he can score, that he can do everything, but Nikola Jokic is still leaps and bounds ahead of him just in terms of proficiency.
Yeah, so on FanDuel, Jokic is 11-3. Like, that's a really big number in comparison to Russ. So paying attention to the ownership between the two, since you only get one center as well. But Jokic is 1.64 fantasy points per minute over the last 30 days. That is the #1 rate in the league over the last 30 days. Nikola Jokic, best in the league over the past 30 days on a per minute basis, which is obviously great to see. I'm not projecting him that high, obviously, but I am, pretty happy at a 1.5 plus rate. On DraftKings, though, where Jokic is 10-5, I think he looks even better. We only have him at 21% ownership on a slate like this. I prefer getting to Jokic there just in comparison to public ownership. The guy that I really want, though, more than anything, 7K Jamal Murray on FanDuel. I think the matchup is really good for him. Do you assume that's just Ben Simmons, like, giving him the business today?
Yeah, okay. I do. And I absolutely do, because and again, like, worrying too much about one-on-one matchups is just as a disclaimer. But do I think that Ben could give him some trouble? I absolutely do. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, could create a nice trickle down to Michael Porter / Aaron Gordon.
Tobias defensively has played spectacularly too. So it's a tough team to even look much at trickle down, because Danny Green can play decent on-ball defense. Like, they have a lot of guys on this team that are really, really showing up.
Yeah. The real problem is just that you don't have that safety valve at the rim if you get beat. It's not the same thing if it's Dwight Howard. So I really like Murray for 7K on FanDuel. I think that price is just too low for this spot, and especially on a 4-gamer. I like Porter at 6,500 or 6,700. I have no idea how many minutes Aaron Gordon's going to play today. He played 20 and a half or something like that in the first game. I gave him 28. I don't really know what to do with the Gordon, Millsap, JaMychal Green minutes right now. But even if Aaron Gordon plays 28, I'm not all that interested in him. He's getting 20% ownership on FanDuel, 14 on DK. I'm under that number. I would have to see something that tells me he's going to play more minutes than 28. Just seems weird that he would go from 20 to 30 in his second game. So I didn't want to take too big of a leap. So really my biggest focus is Jokic and Murray, and I'm not mad about that.
Okay. I will say, though, the fact that Gordon started tells me that you could see his minutes climb pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like I said, I think 28 is a pretty reasonable thing, but they still have to get Paul Millsap out there. They still have to get JaVale McGee out there. Yep. And I don't know how much they want some of these guys playing the 3 in this scenario. And the more minutes you give, plus we also have JaVale. Is JaVale the backup center? If not, then this makes it a little bit easier for Aaron Gordon. If JaVale is the backup center, then we have 48 minutes to try to find for Aaron Gordon, JaMychal Green, Paul Millsap. How many minutes do you want Aaron Gordon playing at the 3? My answer would be minimal at best. The trickle down is weird. I assume they're going to have JaVale be the backup center, but I guess we'll find out.
Brian asked, would you swap Ben for Murray? I'm assuming like in real life. No, I don't want Murray over Ben Simmons. There are guards, there are scoring point guards that I would take over Ben Simmons, but Murray's not one of them for me.
I think it would make them a really interesting team in the playoffs. I don't know if that makes them better or worse, but I think Jamal Murray is uniquely set up to play in the playoffs.
I don't disagree, but I think Ben Simmons is uniquely qualified to guard like any position, and that is a huge asset to have.
I agree. That one's a really tricky one because it's the piece that Philly. I mean, that's been the rumored trade for years.
If Murray was an instant bucket like he is in the playoffs all the time, then yeah, sure. But he's just, I don't know. Tony says, such a bummer we don't get to see Embiid versus Jokic. Sorry, would have been the MVP battle of the Goliaths. Yeah, that would have been incredible.
We probably would have had some sort of like bet on this game, wouldn't we?
Oh, yeah, that's of course. A sizable bet. And it wouldn't have to be money. It could just be pure shame and embarrassment.
I think you should have to do it anyway. This is like the Fred VanVleet contest when Emac has to use somebody else when VanVleet doesn't play. You just have to count Dwight Howard like it's the same.
Yeah. That seems wildly
more fantasy points between Jokic and Howard. The line is even. These are like equals. This is just how this game works.
Dude, if there was actually a line on this, you'd have to give me like plus 35.
I have Dwight at 20. I'll round up. Dwight at 26, Jokic at 53. That's FanDuel. So, 27.
27. Yeah, you'd have to give me an insane line to take that. It would be kind of fun though. Like if you gave me that number, if you gave me
sweating that down like the fourth quarter would be miserable.
Oh, it'd be horrible. Especially if Dwight gets ejected in the first half. That's the concern.
Yeah.
That's my concern with betting on him with anything. But let's move on. Before we do, I want you guys to know about our promo we're doing. It's a really sick one for baseball season. Baseball starts in just a couple days. Actually, 2 days? The 1st of April? So what are you laughing at over here?
The message didn't make it through. It got held for review, but look at Anchor's message in YouTube chat regarding Jamal Murray. Sorry. Like I read that right as you were throwing that to me and I wasn't ready for it.
Listen, I absolutely envy Jamal Murray.
Yeah. Yeah.
That when I saw that, I thought, man, what a lucky fella.
I felt like a single tear come down my cheek. I was just so proud to see it.
Oh, it was great stuff. And I wouldn't even say, I would have just been like, yep, that's me. What?
I would want everyone to know it was me.
Exactly. There are so many things to be embarrassed about in life. That is not one of them at all.
No, not even remote. I would rather have that than win the NBA title.
Julia. Oh, absolutely. Is that even a question?
No. Depends who you are, I guess.
Unless you make the argument that the NBA title leads to that, but
yeah, that's tricky. That's tricky.
Anyway, $9
baseball
for 9 days of Awesemo Plus MLB content. All of our baseball content, player projections, ownership projections, the top stack tool, which I think is one of the most valuable tools on the site, especially for baseball. It's phenomenal. I promise you, this tool will change the way you look at DFS. It's amazing for baseball. It's awesome. Yeah. It's for other sports too, but for baseball, it's phenomenal. Starting 9 is the promo, STARTING 9, all one word. Jordan just put it up on the screen. Go to awesemo.com/promos. You get all 9 days Awesemo Plus MLB for only $9. The tools on here, Josh, are unlike any other site you're going to find. And some of the runs that Alex has made in MLB, mind-numbing.
Yeah. So I think that baseball fits Alex really, really well. It's sort of like the most analytically driven DFS sport, and he just absolutely crushes it. And we see that in the tools. We have a lot of advanced data for baseball that we could really spit out. The top stacks tool from 2 years ago when that came out was just, my jaw was on the floor. It really changed the way that I was putting together my baseball lineups. So I'm really anxious to see what we're offering this year. And I'm really anxious to see Sean's on provide some content for baseball, because he is obviously approaching the baseball game from a very different lens than Alex and the rest of us, in that, at least previously, was making some pretty large stands on some, like, basically unowned stacks on a day-to-day basis. You're going to take a beating on that pretty regularly. But when that stack is the stack,
you win everything.
You have all of the monies at the end of the night.
Yep,
and that is, if you have the ability to withstand that sort of variance, it's a really interesting way to go. It's obviously worked for him. There's more than one way to skin a cat, but we're providing multiple perspectives for baseball this year. And I think that's a very interesting way to go.
It's going to be really fun. And you get the premium Slack chat as well. You get office hours with guys like Sean Zahn, with guys like Alex, with guys like Josh. Just a whole lot of value added when you look at everything included in this package. $9, 9 days, starting 9, awesemo.com/promos. All right, dude. Orlando, Terrence Ross is probable today. Is this a spot where he just comes out and guns with like 30 field goal attempts against the Clippers, no matter what the score is?
He might. So
did you see his tweet?
Yes, that was amazing.
Phenomenal.
Amazing. Yeah,
and
one of the best tweets of the year in the NBA.
But Josh, he means that. Like, that is not tongue in cheek. Terrence Ross meant every single bit of that meme or that gif.
Terrence Ross this season, when Nikola Vucevic, Evan Fournier, Aaron Gordon, and Cole Anthony are off the floor this year, in 165 minutes, he has a 38.2% usage rate.
What is it, 1.35 DraftKings points per minute? Yeah.
Correct. I don't know what to project his usage rate at. Like, obviously, I can't project it at 38. That's not how this works. So here's the tricky spot for me. He's still expensive. He's 6,900 on FanDuel. He's 7,100 on DraftKings. He has not played since March 14th, and he missed the 2 games before that. So he's missed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's missed 9 out of the last 10 Orlando games. But in the one that he did play, he just cannonballed in and played 34 minutes. Yeah. I have no idea what
had 31 points on the day.
I have no idea how to project him today. I have no concept of what minutes I should give him. I have no concept of what usage rate I should give him. So full caveat here. I gave him 28 minutes. I could easily give him 36. I don't know which direction to go. I gave him 28.5% usage. That seemed like a pretty big jump over his normal rates. You could pretty easily get to 30 or 31 or 32 if you wanted to. But the problem lies here in that I don't really think that I'm going to roster anybody from Orlando. Terrence Ross showed up in my sim 5% of the time on FanDuel based on those estimates, 2.5 on DK. The highest owned guy in this game is Michael Carter-Williams on FanDuel at 16%. You get like Terrence Ross, Khem Birch, Chuma Okeke all around like 10%. They look awful. Only Wendell Carter Jr. in my model projects for more than a fantasy point per minute of everybody else that's on the floor for Orlando. Everybody else is at 0.93 or below. Everyone on Orlando is terrible from a per minute fantasy rate. And they face the Clippers, who could have Paul George and Kawhi, could have neither of those two guys. I have no clue. I don't know how you get to much Orlando today. And I assumed I would be getting to a ton of Orlando.
Yeah, I'm with you on everything, but I have to say, with Terrence Ross, if he's really going to be 2, 3, 4% owned, and he really can come out there and, like you say, cannonball into 34 minutes, if Terrence Ross isn't limited in his return, I can assure you that he is not going to cede opportunities to Michael Carter-Williams, Dwayne Bacon, Chuma Okeke, Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter, Khem Birch, James Ennis, and Mo Bamba. I can assure you of that. Like, I would be shocked if Terrence Ross did not touch the ball, 90 times in this game and have 35+% usage. Now, are you right? You are right. You can't project him for 38% usage. But if he had a 40% usage rate, like there's no incentive to win this game, first of all. So even if they're down, he's just going to keep chucking. Terrence Ross is a really enigmatic player, but when he's chucking, he could make 7 of 35 shots, but he's still going to shoot. So that's all I have to say on him.
If I give him 30 minutes and 34% usage, I'm still like not all that interested in getting there.
All right. Fair enough.
He's like a 15%er. But at the same time, I have no confidence in how to project his minutes.
Right.
I think Orlando is going to have at least a little bit of trouble creating shots here against the Clippers.
I think he could too, but it's also just a very unique situation where he is the only player that anyone's ever heard of on this roster.
Yeah, I mean, more or less. I don't know what they do with Wendell Carter's minutes.
I'm being hyperbolic there. Like we know.
Like not really. And the crazy part there is like, he's not even that good.
No, like, right. Like
this is like a G League roster.
Terrence Ross either, yeah.
This is like a G League roster.
It's crazy.
And that G League roster that I'm referencing for Orlando is rolling up against an LA Clippers team that has, 2 very high-end wing defenders to lock down anything that anybody is doing. Not a lot of shot creation coming here from Orlando today. That's for
kind of surprised they're only 11.5-point dogs, to be honest.
Maybe they're assuming both Kawhi and Paul George are out.
That's honestly my thinking that at least one of them is out. Maybe Kawhi sits on the second of a back-to-back and George plays. And maybe Ibaka and Beverly remain out. So
I assume Ibaka and Beverly aren't going to play today. I can't imagine you're bringing them back for this garbage barge of a team. But
I'm taking some shots on Ross. I got to do it. I just think there's just an insane upside from a usage standpoint. What are you doing with the Clippers, Josh? Like I said, George, Ibaka, Beverly, Rondo, all of them questionable. But like you said, I agree. Most of them probably will not play.
So because of the positions on FanDuel, I see Kawhi and Paul George relatively equal in comparison to their salary. So I don't have like a huge lean there. If I had to pick one, I think I would probably go more towards Kawhi than Paul George. But on DK, it's Kawhi Leonard is 8,800. Paul George is 8,600. It's really hard to not want to roster Kawhi Leonard on DraftKings if he's playing today. But I could say the same thing about $5,900 Ivica Zubac or $4,900 Reggie Jackson. All 4 of those guys, Leonard, George, Zubac, Jackson, showing up in about 20% of sims. So I really like getting to that piece from the Clippers. Terrence Mann at 4,700 on DraftKings looks to be a nice value, only picking up 8% ownership. I gave him 27 minutes. I think he stands out as a really nice value play. Marcus Morris is picking up a little bit of love on DK. Not sure I agree with it, but he's 4,500 on FanDuel. I think that ownership is much more appealing. And then I guess I'm willing to spend 4,200 on Nick Batum on FanDuel. He's 5K on DK. I'm significantly less likely to spend that money. But I mean, it doesn't get much better than this for the Clippers. Orlando is in a pretty bad way. They were the 27th ranked offense this year before they traded away all of their best offensive players. So I'm not entirely sure where that goes. I can't imagine their offense gets better when you ship out Aaron Gordon, Vooch, and Evan Fournier. Clearly the 3 best offensive players that were still healthy for this team.
Yeah, even if you just shipped out Vooch, it's going to get notably worse. So
yeah,
not good. Do you have anything else from this game? You want to wrap this one up?
No, I think we're good there. Just keep your eye on the news for Paul George and or Kawhi Leonard, because that will dictate literally everything you do here.
All right. Hit that thumbs up, guys. Get us up over 200. We got about 565 people watching right now on a Tuesday morning. And remember, check out our sponsor, No House Advantage, if you haven't done so yet. When there's ways to make money and make it a lot easier than other sites, you should really take advantage of that opportunity. Couple ways to do so. Go to No House Advantage, download the app. Check out their peer-to-peer player prop contest. It's like a GPP-style contest with player props, where instead of just betting singles on DraftKings and FanDuel and other sites and other books, you're putting them into a contest-style, GPP-style, guaranteed payouts, and they're static props. So throughout the day, they don't change. Whereas money coming in on other sites, heavy on a certain book, is going to move that prop from one way or the other. It doesn't happen here. So you have all of that. You have the free player prop tool over at Awesemo.com. Free No House Advantage player prop tool built by Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. And you have the free optimal lineups tool for No House Advantage that a lot of people playing on this app don't even know about. Huge advantage. And you get a $20 first match deposit bonus when you use the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, when you sign up. So Go make money over there. Even if you're looking to build your bankroll and bring it over somewhere else where you can maybe win $100,000 in a night, but you don't have the bankroll to sustain that type of play. Like Josh said, the way Shanzan plays, you need a bankroll to sustain playing that type of style in a volatile game of DFS. Well, build it somewhere. It's tough to build it slowly on places like DraftKings and FanDuel. I'm not telling you anything you don't know already. No House Advantage is a great place to do that. Take advantage of the tools that we have for free at Awesemo. Take advantage of the first match deposit bonus, and take advantage of the fact that the lines go stale, but you can still hit them and add them to your contest. So go to No House Advantage, download it today, and use the promo code Awesemo. All right, man. Atlanta and Phoenix. Of course, it's 10:51 already.
3-game slate, and we took 51 minutes to get to the game 4.
Yeah, putting in good work. You can listen to this in podcast form, by the way, too. Any podcast platform of your choosing. Review it. Leave a 5-star review. We appreciate that as well. Let's close it out. We've got the Atlanta Hawks 6.5-point dogs to the Suns, 221 total. DeAndre Hunter, Lou Williams, questionable. What are you doing here?
Yeah, so this is probably the most difficult game on the slate because I think it's going to hold the keys to what you need, but I don't think that anyone stands out in a way that makes it obvious of what that's going to be. Trae Young is 8,700 on FanDuel, 9K on DraftKings. He's been a 1.18 FanDuel point per minute guy over the last 30 days. We've got him projected for 29% ownership on FanDuel, which I think is basically spot on, and 22% on DK, which I think is basically spot on. Capella is $8,500 on FanDuel, but because of the way center is set up today, you're either paying all the way up for Jokic, Capella is your next best option, or you're paying down and crossing your fingers. So while I like Capella, I'm not confident in him at that price. Looks way better for $7,400 on DK, $1,100 cheaper. John Collins is $1,200 more expensive on FanDuel than he is on DK. I don't really have too much interest in playing him really on either site, but looks a lot better on DK. Bogdanovic at 4,200 on FanDuel is sort of like the best value from Atlanta, but he hasn't been good as of late, 0.83 fantasy points per minute. It's a terrible matchup against Phoenix. It's a slow matchup. Phoenix ranks 21st in pace, Atlanta 28th. So it's not exactly like a fun up-tempo affair here. Obviously, Chris Paul loves playing in the half court. I have Lou Will in for just the backup point guard minutes as of right now. I assume they want him to play alongside Trae Young at least a little bit. That is they are going to give up points in bunches when that happens. So maybe that is like an outlet to like Phoenix a little bit more. I'm mostly just keeping my eye on Trae Young and Clint Capella, a little bit of Bogdanovic on FanDuel, a little bit of John Collins on DK, but I really just don't trust this matchup for Atlanta. And it just truly scares me.
I'm not feeling great about it either. Phoenix has just really put the clamps on their opposition a lot. And the truth is, even on a 4-game slate, I don't know if you need to force Atlanta in anyway. Like, yeah, it's 4 games, but how much do you really need to force them in? And I just wanted to ask you one more question on Trae Young.
Yeah.
With the way that he's played this season, and I think I mentioned this the other day, it might have been the Terry on the Deeper Dive on Sunday night. He still has a usage rate of 32.5%. He still has like a 47.5% assist rate. He just has zero. I shouldn't say zero. He has little rebounding upside. He's averaging less than a steal per game. And he hasn't really dropped those monster games recently that you're looking for. As a matter of fact, if you look at his production, Trae Young has been worth less than 9K where he's been priced. Like he's not a 10K player right now. So at what point does it get to where we say, all right, we have to stop looking at Trae as this great value and more so as just an appropriately priced player that mirrors his production on the year?
Yeah, I think these price tags are like right where they should be.
Me too.
If the shot is falling, like he's going to look a lot better. He has crazy legitimate upside in scoring, but hasn't been happening all that much. And I think a lot of that just has to do with the fact that we calibrated Trae Young a year ago and maybe like, the season prior, at least the second half, based on an Atlanta team that sucked.
Yep,
they didn't have Clint Capella. Like they didn't have Danilo Gallinari. They had a terrible DeAndre Hunter.
Bogdanovic.
He was just doing more because they didn't have a choice. They had no mechanism to create any additional offense. Now that they actually have better players and become a good team, he's just doing a little bit less. we have to, I think, break free from the scope of what we think the Trae Young is based on what he was before, because this is not the same Atlanta team, and it's not even really close.
Yep, that's a good point. Let's wrap it up with the Phoenix Suns here. Taking a quick look at ownership on this slate for both sites.
Hold on, I gotta stop you right here just so I can put this to bed because it's coming up in chat right now, and it shouldn't be. Bogdan Bogdanovic is available. He is not out today. I don't care what FanDuel says. I will read the NBA injury report, which states that he is available.
Yep, he's not out. FanDuel screws that up more than they don't, honestly. So.
Bogdanovic available, Clint Capella available, Danilo Gallinari available, Hunter is questionable, Reddish is out.
Yep. Lou Williams.
I don't want to tell FanDuel anything. I don't care what they put there. They are not an information source.
Too. Unless you have him as available.
I just shut it. Give me 1 second. I still have it here. He's not even listed on the injury report. So that could be one of two things. He's either fully available or some part of that trade is still flapping in the breeze somehow.
It could be either. Yeah. I don't think it's a huge deal anyway. He'll be a nice little contribution to the team, but
he's unplayable.
He's exactly. He's just not someone that's going to be viable whatsoever. What are you doing with the Phoenix Suns?
God, more responses of now Gallo's out. I can't even do this. Anyway, Phoenix, one of the trickiest teams in the league to actually try to roster. We've got Booker, Paul, Bridges, Ayton, and Crowder, all between 15 and 25% owned on FanDuel. It's a pretty similar story on the DK side. I think Devin Booker looks best on FanDuel. He's 8,200 there. I think he's a little under-owned, but to me, Chris Paul, mildly over-owned. Jay Crowder at 5K on FanDuel, over-owned. I think 17% owned, 8K Chris Paul on DraftKings is over-owned. I have a tough time recommending Phoenix. To me, they are like sort of my favorite fade tonight outside of Devin Booker. I am not really confident in the ownership these guys are getting, and I really just don't like this game from a fantasy perspective.
Me neither. Tony said, Greg said the other day too, never listen to FanDuel or DraftKings for injury news. Correct. DraftKings is actually pretty accurate. Like I actually haven't come across a time this season where DraftKings has been wrong with theirs. Very frequently, I come across FanDuel being completely off. So there's a clear disconnect there, and they're not using the same sources whatsoever. Like I'm not saying
we just keep getting people saying Gallo is out today. He is on the most recent injury report.
Just ignore it, Josh. Just ignore it.
It's insane.
But
we have to be the people that bring the truth. Right, exactly. Like if people need to understand that the NBA.com injury report is the source document for this kind of information. Yep. They listed him as available at 8:30 p.m. last night.
I know. Yeah, DraftKings will get you in less trouble though if you're not someone that's vigilant in doing your homework when it comes to this. I would at least recommend using that over FanDuel. So,
by the way, I have very little doubt that Danilo Gallinari is going to be ruled out in the 130 injury report. Now that we went on this, it happens every time.
Yeah, and then they'll say "told you so," but I don't see him on there. I don't even see him on the injury report at all. So,
available.
Well, you know what I mean. I don't see an injury designation. Yeah.
Correct.
Got anything else?
I mean, not really. I just see a lot of red on the Phoenix side, and that is not all that appealing to me. But this slate is in flux. We have to wait on Bradley Beal news right out of the gate because that at least we know we will get. Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, shrug emoji.
Game changer. Absolute game changer. Bradley Beal, Paul George, stay tuned. We got you covered throughout the day, though. That's really all that matters, right? As news breaks, you're going to hear from us, whether it's on the Deeper Dive tonight with Adam Scher and myself, whether it's on Live Before Lock with Greg and Terry, or with the NBA Late Slate, Live Before Lock. You got two games again tonight, Chris Spags and Greg Ehrenberg. They'll break down some news there as well. We got the PJ Strategy Show at 2 p.m., the NHL Strategy Show at 3 p.m., and behind the paywall is premium stream with our boy Sean's on 3 p.m. daily game plan as well for all of our premium subs. And don't forget, if you want to join, you want to get these gnarly badges and use some of these awesome new, I'm seeing these awesome new, what are they, avatar emojis that we got put in here that our boy Jake D just threw in, some cool ones. I even see one of me up there. That's pretty sweet. Join the Awesemo YouTube and say what's up. Josh, what do you got going on in the YouTubes today? I know you pump content out every single day.
Process show already in the books. We had a fun one this morning. That was good. Both contenders videos also already out. Go check all of that. You and I obviously just did this show. I don't have anything else coming out from an NBA perspective. Ben Raza and I will be recording our PGA contenders in a little bit, and that will make it up onto the YouTube channel maybe later today, probably more likely tomorrow. But we'll have some PGA bets. And honestly, every one of these things, Ben and I are basically hitting like one a piece for every single one of the times that we put this video out. It's been great if you've been tailing any of these picks.
Well, guess what? That'll do it for us. Stick around. Plenty of stuff coming up throughout the day. Appreciate you hanging out as always. We'll see you back here soon. Jordan, cue that music, baby. We're out.
Peace.